Hey, what is good, YouTube fam? JC here with Life with JC. So, real quick, I just wanted to provide some commentary on Bitcoin and the political situation in El Salvador and how I see it. I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. So, as it pertains to this particular topic, um, I studied political economy, which is just a fancy way of saying political science with a bit more focus on economics and mathematics. So, kind of understanding monetary policies of different countries, you know, how these developing countries as well kind of got to the point of where they are today. And I also, in particular, focused a bit on Latin America. Geez, Latin America has a interesting story with monetary policies, and also did some extended research back then into El Salvador. My family's from El Salvador. I was able to receive some scholarships in order to do that research. So I mainly focused on the understanding of political institutions amongst individuals, like in the 20th century, the presidency in particular. So, real quick, how I see it. Currently, the president Nayib Bukele has a supermajority in Congress, which allows him to basically introduce a bill and get that bill passed rather quickly. This is what happened with Bitcoin. Bitcoin was introduced like on about a Thursday, and around Tuesday it was made law. And obviously, when you pass law that quickly, there's going to be some quirks in the bill that might later need to be amended or adjusted or whatnot. What surprises me is, and I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert on Bitcoin. Um, my opinion is more how it plays out, sort of, right? And what it being passed and how it's an indication of what's going on in the country. On the other hand, something that I think is more pertinent right now, like the water shortages, especially in areas that are more dense. There also has been efforts to introduce legislation, and so the bill has been introduced. However, they're granting Congress about 90 days to work on it, and it's interesting because this is something that affects folks on a more day-to-day basis. However, it didn't, or it wasn't given the same prioritization as the introduction of Bitcoin, right? We know that in a lot of developing countries, there are issues with water, and we hear this often enough about privatization, and it's usually coming from these countries. Mexico also has it. And there's a bunch of other countries that are facing similar, infrastructural issues. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, why um, this to me seems to play into this whole political environment is because first, you had the dollarization of El Salvador, and right now, especially, you're getting pushback from the people of El Salvador because they kind of went through this once, right? When dollarization was introduced in El Salvador, the idea was that you would get your colones and then you would trade them in and get them converted to dollars. At first, the idea was that both currencies were going to circulate. That didn't happen. A lot of individuals had savings or whatnot in the bank, and overnight, basically, it got converted over to dollars. And so, something that was speculated that was part of the bill, just because of how it was written and the lack of language in it, was the uh, intent to maybe convert folks' money into Bitcoin. A lot of people push back on this, and this has been one of the acts that has uh, been pushed back by the people of El Salvador. Um, of the few acts of this president that are quite questionable, right? One being the introduction of the military into the Congress floor. The second one being so one of those laws could get signed. That was the reason they were there, supposedly to protect them. It was an interesting show. The second one was the removal of the Supreme Court, of the individuals of the Supreme Court, the judges of the Supreme Court. The third one being right now there has been a confiscation of the leading, more neoliberal, right-leaning party, Arena, of their properties. So their headquarters basically got confiscated by the government because of a misuse of funds that were received by Taiwan in about, I think, 2003, 2004 for the earthquake. And so there were some individuals in the party who misused the funds. They used them for, more personal gains. And so he used that as a reason to go and, um, uh, take properties from the party and create this kind of like political show. Really, at this point, it's political persecution, and he's trying to kind of stamp out a bit of the opposition, right? Arena right now is still actually probably the strongest opposition because it is really carried out by the middle class of El Salvador, whereas there's really no other. They're like small parties. They're very ideologically based, and so they still have a stronghold. But Arena is really more the middle class party, and that's why it still has been able to maintain enough support to still be a voice for the other side, or for a different ideology for the country. Now, in terms of and so with that, the pushback, those have been some of the acts that really have kind of made the nation, or the people of the nation, kind of really question, hey, what's going on? And now the Bitcoin has been one of the ones that has received some pushback from individuals, and it's really because of like the logistics, right? People are uncertain of whether their dollars will get converted to Bitcoin. The obligation of merchants, or sellers to businesses, to receive Bitcoin as a currency. So if I'm a customer and I go and I say I want to pay in Bitcoin, I have to receive the Bitcoin even if I don't want to. And this does really present an issue for smaller businesses, or even individual sellers. I'll give you a really easy example here. Let's say you sell coconuts on the corner, which is very common in El Salvador. You most likely need liquidity, day in and day out. So liquidity is just a fancy way of saying like money on hand, right? So if I am a coconut seller, I might have enough supply for 2 to 3 days. With whatever I have made, I will go and buy more coconuts. It's not even to say that I'm gonna make a profit. Maybe some folks are breaking even, and so really it's just to kind of continue the business, hoping for a better season and all that good stuff, right? So, and that's just like the nature of businesses, right? You're not always going to be in profit, but with being able to have cash on hand for these individuals, they can continue, and go and get new stock. Now, the tricky thing about Bitcoin, or what it can introduce as a problem, is you might have, say, half of your funds in cash and the other half in Bitcoin, and you then have this issue of going and converting that Bitcoin into cash, or going to another supplier who will also provide the same amount, hoping that the amount of Bitcoins that you did have kept their value, or maybe increased a bit during those 2 to 3 days in order to be able to buy the stock that you need. So that presents an issue, even for everyday sellers. A lot of El Salvador's economy is kind of like in the informal sector and stuff like that. Um, and like there's like other interesting kind of like ideas that he has in terms of using volcano energy to mine Bitcoin. However, even that would require an initial investment, and it's not a guaranteed thing that the investment that would be made would actually generate the types of gains that he is discussing, right? Now, is it all bad? I think the one upside could probably be the remittance. So, a lot of El Salvador's, like a good chunk of El Salvador's economy is actually powered by remittance, right? They have a large portion of the population working internationally, particularly the US, Canada, Spain, Colombia. And so folks are sending dollars back, or the currency or whatever, and they're paying for that service. And here in the U.S., for example, it could average like $3 to $10. It really depends on how much individuals are sending back. Bitcoin could potentially have some savings because their service fees are not as much, but um, you know, you still have this um, service fee that is built into these digital wallets. Then the retrieving of the actual liquid cash, if you needed, which could also be a logistical nightmare. Obviously, they're trying to build out the infrastructure to have all the different ATMs in the country that would allow them to more easily go in and grab this money. Right now, typical service like Western Union, you go in, you retrieve. At that point, you don't pay any service fees, right? Like the service fee has been paid by the sender, not the receiver. So, what I'm trying to get at, I guess, in general, is having the ability to easily pass laws right now is the opportune time to really pass laws that will actually make a big impact uh, for the people, opposed to passing laws like the nationalization or the introduction of Bitcoin as a national currency. I think that it's uh, more critical at this point, especially because if you just think about the political infrastructure, the economic infrastructure of El Salvador, um, Bitcoin is not really something that is going to solve those things, right? You really have to get under the hood and you have to solve those other more pressing issues. But I don't know where, I really can't foresee where things go. The president still has some time in power. There might even be constitutional reforms for him to be able to reelect himself. Or right now, because it's only right now you can only do one term, so 5 years. So the constitution might get rewritten, and he might be able to run again. And so the, the I guess I just wanted to opine a little bit on my point of view for Bitcoin and El Salvador. I think there's so many other things that could be addressed, and even I think the people now are really starting to question some of his acts, but they're in a situation where they can't really do much now, right? He has the supermajority. Introductions of various laws, is quite easy at this point, unless there's like so much pushback from the people that they, uh, and the thing is, like, even as individual political agents, like, they really are limited in their abilities to be able to sway their representatives to not vote for a particular bill in a particular way. So I know a lot of people are hyping up like, hey, Bitcoin and El Salvador and all that good stuff. And I guess from my point of view, from looking at all the different times that different types of monetary policies were introduced in Latin America that really just dug them deeper into, these debt holes and having to then look for financing power from the monetary fund, International Monetary Fund. It really worries me, right? Like this president has increased the deficit more so than previous governments. He continues to seek outside uh, loans in order to power these different programs. There, in terms of their GDP, there's going to be about like 5% left over maybe for future investments. You're talking about 5% for everything from education, infrastructure, you know, um, health, all that good stuff. For a country that really doesn't produce a lot internally, they are a import uh, import majority opposed to export. They're not exporting a lot of things. In the heydays, like before the Civil War, exporting a lot of agricultural goods, right? Coffee, corn, bean, all that good stuff. Now, they are mostly consuming, and so they're importing a lot, which it doesn't affect them as much because yeah, they have dollars, but what ends up happening is that there is less and less dollars in the banks, uh, which could present its own issue. And if you bring that into like with Bitcoin, well, then what happens? Like if there's more Bitcoin circulating and there aren't as many dollars with a import-rich country, it could quickly get, uh, for lack of a better word, ugly. So I know that there are a lot of evangelists out there for Bitcoin, and I think that Bitcoin is an important technology. It's a transformational technology. However, I don't necessarily think that the best test site for it is El Salvador. El Salvador, you know, recently signed their peace accords, and a lot of people think it was a long time ago, but it's not too far in the past that they signed their peace accords, and they are barely really trying to build out their political infrastructure. And they've really kind of had these different presidencies that have been more personality driven, opposed to really like the driven on fortifying their democratic institutions. So sorry, I know it's long winded. I know it might be a little ranty, but I think there's just like a lot of talk out there right now, and there are a lot of people that are in particular communities saying like, "Oh, this is so great," all that good stuff. But I think only the people of that nation really know what's kind of like the best thing. And the thing is that they're not coming from this from a point of no previous experience. I don't think that a lot of people can really grasp the idea of waking up one day and your currency is completely gone and you have a new currency, eliminating the ability of the government to do the necessary monetary adjustments in order to adjust for trade deficits and all that good stuff when you still control your own currency. Obviously, I think that even the introduction of USD kind of allowed that ability to be removed from the government, which could have, was being used sometimes inappropriately, but every government should still have the sovereign ability to be able to do that. And now you go through this a second time, and it's not at this point fears, it's, stuff that is well, will kind of like let me see the right uh, uh, thought out of, I guess, of what they have experienced before, right? It's not like, hey, this is like something that we've never lived through. It's something that they have lived through. So, with that, I don't necessarily speak about politics or anything, but this stuff to me really is at heart. I'm really concerned about what is happening in El Salvador. Um, the latest act of, the confiscation of properties of the Arena Party really also concerns me because it is at this point like political persecution, and yes, the party did wrongs in the past. They are righting those wrongs. They are on the right trajectory, and really they're probably the only voice of reason right now in a country that is just getting deeper and deeper into this populist movement. And it's not it's just history rewriting itself for Latin America, or for like a lot of these developing countries that have more populist leaders. So hopefully that gives you another perspective of what's going on, of how this introduction of Bitcoin in El Salvador is being treated, um, where maybe the nation goes after this, and gives you an interest in maybe kind of understanding that there are great technologies out there, and they're important because they can have these transformational changes for all these for society in general. But we also have to think of like the casualties along the way, and we have to sometimes do our best, right? Because they always say like hindsight 2020, but to see like what's gonna happen in the future after all this, right? Like how are the people going to be affected, and to think also that there are other more pertinent infrastructural issues that could be addressed and can be could be tackled as of today. Instead, uh, Bitcoin has been presented as the solution for El Salvador's woes. So with that, I don't want to end on a bad note. I hope you enjoyed it. Really, it's not supposed to be apocalyptic or anything. It's just like what I see, um, what I from really, and I am sincere here, like having studied, and it's not like a plea to authority or anything like that. I don't want to commit those like logical fallacies. It's really just like, uh, and it's not also to like beef up my authenticity or anything like that, right? But like really, like I even I was here in the U.S., decided to move to Latin America, really kind of have that whole visceral experience. And everyone can say, yeah, but you're doing it like in a first world kind of perspective, always with that ability of like being able to go back. And sure, you can always fault me for that, right? Like there's a bunch of PhDers who go and do their field research. They're out there for 2 to 3 years or whatever, and then they come back. Okay, I understand that. I understand that it's way more authentic to maybe just like say, hey, well, I'm gonna live there forever, and quite frankly, like I'm not trying to like say that or do that or anything like that, but I have at least really, I took my studies seriously. I really did like, you know, read the literature, read the research papers. I even then spent time really understanding. Like, for me, it wasn't just like, oh, you're a child of Salvadorian immigrants or anything like that. No, for me, it was like, Okay, cool. Well, I really want to understand a little bit more. And obviously, I was privileged enough to be able to do that, right? Like, not lots of people have that opportunity. And I think that's why, till this day, I really try to understand and see what's going on and um, do my best to look at things from that, long term lens, right? And more often than not, I've noticed that like things might feel nice right now, but then the issues come later, and that's with anything in life. Like, yeah, of course, everything's a risk, but you know, it should be measured risk that makes sense for really kind of what we need right now, right? So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I really would appreciate if you were subscribe, like, and also in addition, if you want to see this in Spanish, I can definitely do it in Spanish. Speak Spanish, obviously. And if you want to see it in Spanish, I'm more than happy to do a video in Spanish as well. I'm just not sure. But thank you so much. So, peace out, YouTube fam.